Imagine having a secret, a very big, very heavy secret. Imagine keeping that secret inside your heart for years. You keep it locked away because you want to be a good friend. You keep it quiet because you promise not to make trouble. But what happens when that secret starts to hurt you? What happens when the person you are protecting is actually hurting you behind your back? For a long time, everyone thought they knew the story of two famous women. One was a queen of fashion, cool and calm. The other was a new princess, full of smiles and stories. The world thought they were friends. The magazines said they were best friends. But photographs can lie. Smiles can hide the truth. There is a saying that you can only be pushed so far before you push back. You can only stay silent for so long before the truth screams to get out. This is the story of the moment the silence finally broke. This is the story of a friendship that turned into a battle, and the one night when everything changed forever. For 20 years, Victoria Beckham has been famous for being quiet. She is the woman who rarely smiles in photos. She went from being a famous pop singer to running a huge fashion business. Through all of that, she never let the world see her get upset. She never let people see her lose control. The newspapers and magazines always tried to find scandals about her. They chased her with cameras. They wrote wild stories. But Victoria was a master at staying calm. She mastered the art of saying absolutely nothing. But then came one night in London. It was a cold night outside, but inside the room was warm and bright. It was a fancy party known as a gala. Everything was supposed to be perfect. There were flashing cameras everywhere. Waiters carried trays of expensive champagne. Famous people were wearing diamonds that sparkled under the lights. It was just another elegant night for the rich and famous. Victoria walked onto the stage. She looked perfect, as she always does. She was there to give an award to a young fashion designer. She stood tall. She looked cool and collected. But halfway through her speech, something changed. The air in the room felt different. Her voice did not sound the same. It got harder. It sounded serious. She stopped reading her speech. She put her hand down on the wooden podium. She looked up. She looked straight at a reporter standing in the crowd. Then she said 7 simple words, 7 words that nobody expected to hear from her. She said, "I kept quiet too long. People need to know." The room went completely dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. The music stopped. The glasses stopped clinking. No one spoke a name. Victoria did not say a name either. She didn't have to. Everyone in that room knew exactly who she was talking about. Everyone knew the story that had been whispered for years. She was talking about Meghan Markle. In just a few minutes, a video of that moment was online. Someone had filmed it on their phone. It was a short video, only 11 seconds long, but it traveled around the world faster than lightning. By the next morning, more than 4 million people had watched it. The comments under the video were full of shock. People wrote things like, "Did she really say that?" And "I can't believe Victoria finally spoke." One person wrote, "Victoria just popped Meghan's bubble with one sentence." The woman who built her whole life on being quiet and graceful had finally decided to speak up. That one sentence felt like the start of something huge. It felt like an earthquake in the world of famous people. But this wasn't just a sudden fight. It wasn't a random argument. This was a story about friendship, broken promises, and silence. And it had been going on for a lot longer than anyone realized. To understand why this moment was so shocking, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to look at how it all started. When Meghan Markle first came to England to join the royal family, she was entering a new world. Victoria Beckham was one of the very first people to welcome her. Meghan was new to the United Kingdom. She was an actress from Hollywood. She was used to movies and red carpets, but she wasn't used to the royal family. She was trying to fit into one of the oldest and strictest groups of people on Earth. It was hard. Victoria knew how hard it could be. She knew exactly how mean the British newspapers could be. She had lived through it herself for many years. So Victoria did something very rare. She did something very kind. She reached out to Meghan personally. Victoria wanted to help. She sent Meghan her own private list of phone numbers. This was a very special list. It had the names of the best hairstylists. It had the names of people who help you look good in public. It even had the names of spa owners who kept secrets. These were places where famous people could go to relax without anyone taking their picture. Victoria wanted Meghan to feel safe. She wanted her to have a safety net. She wanted to be a friend who understood the pressure of being famous. Soon the two women were seen together. They went to watch tennis at Wimbledon. They sat next to each other. They were laughing and whispering like old friends. They looked like they were having fun. Victoria even sent clothes from her own fashion company to the palace for Meghan to wear. People who work in the fashion world were surprised. They said Victoria didn't have to do any of this. She was a busy woman. She didn't need to help, but she chose to do it because she wanted Meghan to feel supported. She wanted to be a good friend. At first, it looked like a perfect team. You had the Hollywood Duchess and the British fashion queen. Meghan talked about how much she liked Victoria's clothes in interviews. Victoria's team was happy. They quietly celebrated because the royal family liked their work. For a little while, everything seemed perfect. There was respect. There was glamour. There was a friendship built on trust. But things are not always what they seem. Behind the smiles and the pretty photos, something was starting to break. By the end of the year 2019, whispers started to travel around London. People in the media started talking. They said that Meghan had become suspicious. She started to think someone was telling her secrets. Private details about her life were appearing in the newspapers. These were things that only her closest friends knew. Meghan was worried. She wanted to know who was leaking the stories. No one said a name out loud at first, but soon the speculation spread like a wildfire in a dry forest. One name kept coming up again and again. That name was Victoria Beckham. To most people, this sounded silly. It sounded ridiculous. Victoria had protected her own privacy for 20 years. She hated leaks. Why would she ever risk her reputation to tell stories about Meghan? It didn't make sense. But stories say that Meghan believed it. To her, the leaks felt personal. According to people who know them, Meghan began to cut people off. She didn't fight with them. She didn't yell. She just went quiet. She created distance. Suddenly, Victoria found herself frozen out. It was like a door had been slammed in her face. The invitations to royal dinners stopped coming. Text messages went unanswered. Victoria had opened her world to Meghan. She had shared her contacts and her advice. Now she was being treated like a stranger. She was being treated like an outsider. By the time Meghan and Prince Harry left their royal jobs, the Beckhams were completely gone from their life. There were no more photos of them together. There were no more friendly moments. There was just silence, a cold, heavy silence. For years, both women said nothing. The newspapers guessed what happened. The internet tried to figure it out, but neither side said the truth. Victoria kept her head down. She focused on her work. She focused on making her clothes and running her business. Meghan moved to California and built a new life in Hollywood. For a while, it seemed like this quiet fight would stay buried forever. It seemed like no one would ever know the truth. That is, until that night at the gala. That was the night Victoria looked at the cameras and decided that being silent was a mistake. She decided that her silence had protected the wrong person for long enough. Victoria's words at the gala were shocking, but the public reaction was about to get even bigger. A new story came out. It was a story about a charity event that went wrong. Victoria had been planning a fundraiser for a children's hospital. This was a project very close to her heart. She wanted to raise money for sick children. Meghan was supposed to be the co-host. The plan was for Meghan's royal fame to help raise millions of dollars. But according to insiders, something bad happened. Meghan reportedly told the organizers that Victoria's name should not be on the event. She said Victoria didn't fit with the royal vision. Later, an email appeared. People say it came from one of Meghan's helpers. The email was very cold. It said, "Per the Duchess's request, please find a different fashion sponsor. We have concerns about the brand and the press." In just a few weeks, Victoria's name was taken off the posters. She had disappeared from the event. Victoria had spent months planning this. She had donated her designs. She had even paid some of the costs with her own money. Suddenly, she was cut out without a warning. She didn't even get a thank you. A friend of Victoria said she felt humiliated. That means she felt very embarrassed and hurt. She had given her time and her name for free. She did it to help children. Then she was told she wasn't good enough to stand next to a duchess. For Victoria, that was the moment everything changed. That was the moment the betrayal stopped being just about friendship. It started to feel cruel. It started to feel mean. The day after Victoria's words at the gala went viral, her husband did something too. David Beckham is a famous soccer player. He is known for being loyal to his family. He made his own move. David posted a simple photo on social media. It was a picture of him, Victoria, and their children. They were sitting around a dinner table. They were laughing. They looked happy and strong. There were no long paragraphs written under the photo. There were no hashtags. There was just one sentence beneath it. It said, "Truth always comes out in the end." It was a very subtle message. He didn't shout. He didn't name names, but everyone knew what he meant. It wasn't just a nice family picture. It was a statement. He was telling the world that he stood by his wife. Other famous people started to follow quietly. A supermodel who is friends with Victoria commented with 3 red heart emojis. A famous designer reposted the picture on their own page. They added the words, "Some people mistake kindness for weakness." While this was happening, Meghan's powerful circle of friends went completely silent. Usually her friends are very loud on the internet, but this time there were no tweets. There were no likes on Instagram. There were not even polite statements of support. Oprah was silent, Serena Williams was silent. Even Prince Harry, who usually jumps to defend Meghan, said nothing. Photographers caught him at the airport a few days later. He had his head down. His face looked tight and stressed. That silence spoke louder than any interview could. For years, Meghan had been seen as untouchable. People saw her as the brave woman who stood up against the royal system. She was the duchess who told her truth, but now her silence was being read differently. Every minute she stayed quiet, Victoria looked stronger, and Meghan looked guiltier. One fashion editor wrote an article about it. They wrote, "Victoria Beckham has built a career on elegance and control. If she is finally speaking, something must have broken her." That line captured the mood perfectly. This wasn't a publicity stunt to sell clothes. This was something raw. It was real pain. Years of friendship had turned into heartbreak. Professional trust had turned into betrayal. Two powerful women were standing on opposite sides of the same secret. Victoria's message was clear, even without saying it directly. The message was, you can only protect the wrong person for so long. Just when people thought the story couldn't get any bigger, a new shock wave hit the internet. Late one night, a short audio clip appeared online. It was only 14 seconds long. In the clip, you could hear a woman's voice. The voice was calm, but it was sharp. It sounded angry. The voice said, "She is lucky I don't say what I know about her." No name was mentioned in the recording. There was no context, but the person who uploaded it claimed the voice belonged to Meghan Markle. They claimed she was talking about Victoria Beckham. Within hours, the clip had over 6 million views. The internet exploded with theories. Some people said it was fake. They said it was made by a computer. Others swore it was real. They said it sounded exactly like her. Even Meghan's most loyal fans went quiet. One big fan account deleted their tweet supporting her. They replaced it with one line, "If that audio is real, I don't know what to say anymore." Victoria did not post a single word about the audio. She didn't say it was true. She didn't say it was false. She didn't attack, but someone close to her told reporters a very interesting thing. They said Victoria was disappointed but not surprised. Those 4 words, "but not surprised," hit like a lightning bolt. They painted a picture of a woman who already knew the truth. It showed that Victoria already knew how bad the betrayal was. It showed that she had chosen dignity over drama. Then came the whisper that changed everything again. Rumors started to spread that Victoria Beckham was thinking about doing an interview, not just a short speech at a party, not just a tweet, a full, long sit-down interview. People said it would be her first time ever directly talking about Meghan Markle. A close friend reportedly told a journalist, "She feels like people only know half the story. She is ready to tell the rest." Those words were enough to scare Meghan's public relations team. Insiders said there were emergency phone calls, there were crisis meetings, there were even discussions about lawyers. All of this happened before Victoria had said a single new word, but the damage was already done. Every hour that passed, Meghan looked smaller in the story. Victoria looked stronger. She was the quiet, wronged woman who finally decided to stop protecting the bully. Even insiders in Hollywood began to admit what many had whispered for years. They said, "When Victoria Beckham is done with you, doors close fast in this town." By the end of the week, the story had gone far beyond fashion or gossip. It wasn't just about dresses or parties anymore. It became something bigger. It was about truth. It was about silence. It was about the price you pay for betrayal. Victoria's fans flooded her Instagram comments. They left thousands of messages. They wrote things like, "Proud of you for speaking your truth," and "Real class never needs a microphone." Victoria didn't respond to any of them. She didn't need to. Her silence had already said everything that needed to be said. And then came the quote that will likely be remembered forever. When a reporter finally asked her why she spoke up after so many years, Victoria gave a quiet answer. She said, "I stayed quiet because I thought it would protect everyone, but all it did was protect the wrong person." It was a line that echoed across every headline in the world. It was simple, it was powerful, it was final. Meanwhile, Meghan's camp still had no public answer. There was no denial, there was no explanation, there wasn't even a no comment. And the longer that silence lasted, the more people began to believe Victoria's side of the story. David Beckham's short sentence, "Truth always comes out in the end," suddenly felt like a prediction that came true. Because this time, the truth wasn't coming from a tabloid newspaper. It wasn't coming from a rumor on the internet. It was coming from a woman who had stayed silent through decades of fame. She had stayed silent through scandal and pressure. She stayed silent until someone pushed her too far. And now, the world was finally listening.